So you're involved in this United City campaign in Manchester. What is it trying to achieve?
I think it's to try and take control of the messaging locally. I think that 8 months after this virus started and we first went into lockdown, to not have a clear plan out of this is something that we're finding difficult to understand why, and we're frustrated. And I think that obviously we've been put in the toughest tiers, which is something that again brings greater yeah, problems for us. I mean, we've got economic problems, we've got health problems, mental health issues. There's a lack of understanding of how we're going to come out of it, uncertainty. And we just felt the business community in Manchester has always been resilient. Management unions have always come together to come out of crises like this before. And it's about time now that we started to think about how the future looks, short, medium and long term. You get asked to be part of a lot of groups, a lot of campaigns, but this one, it just felt like there was a group of about 120 of us now who just felt that we weren't getting the messaging that we wanted from government.
And you, of course, run hotels in Manchester, so you're a businessman there. How has it been? It must be been really hard.
It's shocking. It's shocking, and I have to say the whole of the hospitality sector has been devastated. And I'd split it probably into two parts. With the restrictions in place, we're purely in a defensive position. We need more support. The furlough helps, but there does need to be other economic support packages put in place for all hospitality whilst we're in these restrictions. And even then coming out of the restrictions, it isn't then going to end. There needs to be support in place. The VAT helped, the business rates relief helped. That there's no doubt, but they need to continue to allow, they've racked up more debt during this period. And I worry about the next 12 months. There's going to need to be a fair wind with us. We certainly cannot continue to keep moving in and out of tiers the way in which we are, or else it's just going to be complete devastation on people's livelihoods.
And of course, Greater Manchester in particular, you've been under tighter restrictions for an awfully long time now.
Yeah, I think only 3 weeks without restrictions. I think it's the worst hit city. I don't think people of Greater Manchester have a problem with restrictions if it's saving people's lives. They have a problem with restrictions that aren't then where the economic package and support isn't in place to actually align with what's happening. People are losing their jobs, livelihoods are being lost. It's affecting the disadvantaged and the vulnerable most. The hospitality sector, who works in the hospitality sector, who props it up? It's young people, it's the lowest paid workers, and they're the people who need the income badly, and they're not getting the income. And we had 250 people working in our hotels before this pandemic. At this moment in time, there isn't any work there. There isn't any work there. The part-time staff who come in a weekend to work on match days, say for instance around hotel football, we don't have match days. So we've just got a real big problem that's brewing. There isn't any pathway out of it, and that is the big frustration. That's why United City was sent up. We need to change the direction of the messaging and have a clear way out of this, because it can't continue to go on.
As you say, 250 people straight away whose livelihoods depend on the future of what happens there. So just to be clear, is it the restrictions that you've got a problem with, or is it the fact that there's not enough economic support along with it?
I don't have a problem with the restrictions in respect of we need to save lives. Health must be the priority.
And clearly there is high COVID in Manchester.
Yeah. I think there is high COVID in Manchester. In certain aspects, pockets of Manchester, there's very high cases, and in other parts there isn't. It's this blanket approach to the whole of Greater Manchester, which I think has been applied to London and other areas as well. The restrictions, I think, aren't a problem, but the lack of support and the lack of planning to come out of it is the big problem. The uncertainty. I'll give you one example. We're in Tier 3. We're being told currently that we will be told whether we're going into Tier 2 on the 16th of December and that we can open hospitality on the 19th. How can that be? We can't order the food in time, you can't open your booking engines, how can people plan? You can't mobilise your staff. So we're in a situation whereby there is no plan, everything's so reactive and immediate, and it cannot be like that. Leadership cannot be like that. And I was critical of the Labour Party earlier on in the week because they're there to protect the disadvantaged and the vulnerable, and the restrictions being in place which protects health is fine, but they know that the economic support isn't in place aligned with those restrictions, which means you've got to take a position and be bold and go against it. You cannot abstain, and that's where people of Manchester at this moment in time, I think, are frustrated with the lack of leadership in, I suppose, protecting the residents of Manchester and the communities that are hardest hit.
So you'd have liked to see Labour vote against the tier system then?
Yeah, I don't like half-rose leadership. Take a stance. You go out in your general election. You're told in your general election to all the people on the doorsteps, get out and vote. So when you're elected and you are in that You're in that seat in Westminster, you just take a position, you don't abstain, you take part in the match, you're the opposition. You're the opposition. You don't sit in the stand. They sat in the stand whilst the home team had a clear run. And even they didn't have a clear run because some of their own players got sent off.
Quite a few red cards in that match. I've got to ask you, what would you say to people who say, look, footballers should just stay out of politics, stick to football?
I don't have a problem with it, to be honest with you. I mean, my Twitter timeline is full of critics. It's full of people who support, and I have no issue with it. I think that, does everybody not feel a little bit more political the last couple of years? I think they do. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. I think people are more engaged. Maybe it's because of the leaders that we've had in some of the biggest countries in the world have been quite divisive, or they've engaged with people more. They've brought people's opinions to the fore more. I think Brexit, I think COVID, the fact that we've been at home watching government ministers speaking every night on television, the fact that we have had nothing else to do for 3 or 4 months and other than to do that, I don't think it's a bad thing. And football players have an ability to be able to connect. And leadership is about connecting. And you think of what football players have done this last 6 months. There was a point earlier in the pandemic where I think the health minister suggested that footballers need to do more. I don't think he would be saying that today, because footballers do try. You know, footballers generally are from low-income families, from areas like Dudley and Bury and Barrow. They're not from Hampstead or Knightsbridge. They're not from sort of what would be wealthy families or rich families. They're not, and they're generally good people. Football players. They obviously have the faults, like everybody, but they want people to get by. They want opportunities for all. They want equality. They want inclusion. And to me, there is too much division. And I think that's where there is an element of football players now becoming more political, ex-football players becoming more political, because they see that it's an issue. We cannot have this division whereby we're against each other and we're at each other's throats and you're either here or you're here. We have to come back towards the middle whereby we work as one. And at this moment in time, we aren't working as one as a nation. We need to work better.
What do you think it says about our political leaders? The fact that people like yourself, people like Marcus Rashford, have felt that actually you need to use your platform to try and bring people together, like you've said, and to try and make change.
I've got no doubt how difficult it's been in the last 8 to 10 months being in government. I've got no doubt. Unique circumstances. And I've been there where I was the leader of a football club for 4 months in Valencia, and I was out of my depth and I was spinning and I had to just jump off the roundabout because ultimately I was out of my depth and I didn't know what I was doing. And that's why I feel in the last 8 months I've seen in the leadership in this country.
So you think they have felt out of depth?
They're out of the depth. They're out of the depth. The countries who've dealt with this really well they've had definite and sure leaders, people who've been in control, composed, clear plans, clear communication strategy, aggressive testing, discipline tracing. They've had maybe border controls in place early. They've made decisions that have been unpopular at times, but they've really handled the virus well. We're still 8 months later, none the wiser as to how our long-term looks, how our short-term looks, how our medium-term looks. We're in Manchester, don't know whether we're coming out of a lockdown in 2 weeks. And if we come out of that lockdown, we don't know whether we're going back in it again 2 weeks later. We've got to have a plan that surely works.
Well, I've got you. Fans coming back into stadiums this weekend. Going to see some fans back at Premier League matches. But of course, in Tier 3 areas, there won't be any fans allowed back in, including, of course, for the Manchester clubs as well. It feels like a bit of a postcode lottery. Do you think it's going to put some clubs at a disadvantage?
I don't believe personally it is. I think that I'm happy to see fans come back into stadiums. I do think this idea that Salford City, if they were to come into Tier 2 in 2 weeks, can have 2,000, but Manchester United got a 75,000 stadium, can have 2,000 is just madness. I mean, surely Manchester United can house more than 2,000 people safely and socially distanced. At Salford, we might only be able to hold 1,200. So again, it's this blanket approach, this lack of bespoke approach to sort of different situations. How do we deal with the hospitality sector? How do we deal with the hospitality sector? We want to close it. We believe it potentially causes health damage to us. Okay, well, we need a bespoke package for the hospitality sector, the travel sectors that we know, because we're putting border restrictions in place. We're not allowing people to fly. Okay, well, this is the travel sector. We're going to put a bespoke package in place. It just seems to me to be a blanket approach to everyone, irrespective of the good or the bad situation that you're in. And that's the same with football clubs. 2,000 in a 10,000 stadium, a 75,000 stadium or a 5,000 stadium. I'm happy about it. It's the start. You know, I know that they'll increase, but it's the beginning and we should be happy about it. But again, it's just another example of where you feel it's just a case, it's a bit lazy. It's a little bit lazy. It's not really leadership. It's a, go on, we'll just let 2000 back in. Where's the science behind that? They always said they would look at the science. Where is the science behind 2000? There can't be. There can't be any science.
Thanks very much. It's been really fascinating to talk. Thank you.
Thank you.